But first, you've actually heard a lot today already, on Sky particularly, about the Lynette Dawson murder verdict. So I'm not going to add much more, except to make one observation that I found rather sad. Now, the basics of what happened, I imagine millions of Australians have heard them over the years. 40 years ago, Lynette Dawson went missing. Her husband, Chris, a teacher, former rugby league star, said she shot through. Marital troubles, just left him and their 2 young daughters, although she had rung him since a few times. But no one else, not her family, not her daughters, ever heard from Lynette Dawson again. Not since January 8, 1982. And Chris Dawson later moved in with a very young woman, one of his students, someone he'd been having an affair with before his wife vanished. Now, you, me, 99% of Australians would today say, well, Lynette Dawson almost certainly murdered by her husband. Isn't that obvious? Look there first. No body was ever found, but just look at the circumstantial evidence. Doesn't it scream at you? Well, it did today to the judge, who, having gone through all the evidence, said Dawson killed his wife when his young lover had gone away for a while, leaving him beside himself.
He remained shackled to a wife that he had only days before shown himself to be more than enthusiastic to leave. I'm satisfied that the prospect that he would lose so distressed, frustrated, and ultimately overwhelmed him that, tortured by her absence up north, Mr Dawson resolved to kill his wife.
Okay, and yet, as obvious as this verdict seems today, apparently 40 years ago it didn't, or not to the police then, who really didn't dig deep at all. Now, look, maybe they were starstruck because Chris Dawson, rugby league player, Newtown Jets, or was Australia really different then? Now, I was just in my 20s at the time. Maybe I didn't notice much, I don't know. Were we really so much more naive then that we didn't think, first person you look at in a case like this, the husband? I actually find that a bit hard to believe. People are saying that today. I find it a little bit hard to believe, but maybe we were. Maybe we were. And if so, what happened that we now automatically almost, and certainly today rightly say, yes indeed, the husband? We must have had a lot of shocks along the way over these 40 years, seen a lot of things we didn't think possible. Maybe also we've had a lot of brave women finally speaking up. Journalist Hedley Thomas was talking about this just after the trial on the steps of the court, because he's had plenty of time to think about this case. 2017, he started a podcast called Teacher's Pet, downloaded 60 million times. That went through all the clues, put it all together, and police in the cold case unit meanwhile dug and dug for the evidence.
There's a lot of criticism that's been appropriately made of the police investigation early. You know, Lynette Dawson was missing for 8 years and just treated as a runaway mother for that time when the circumstances were so gravely suspicious. It wouldn't happen today. If something like that happened today, there would be, as Damien Loon, who picked up the investigation and did such an amazing job with it from 1998, as he said, there would be a strike force that would be set up today, and there would be a very strong focus on the spouse. But that didn't happen, and I think that's a reflection of society and how far things have come.
I did think, by the way, yes, we were naive back then about looking at the husband first. Maybe we should be less naive today about the power of the media, the role of the media, this rush to try people by media. I admire Hedley Thomas so very much, and what he did was wonderful. You saw the result today. But that podcast he did was as dangerous as it was useful in getting justice for Lynette Dawson's family. It brought out more evidence, put the focus on the case. That was great. But at the same time, it influenced minds, including of witnesses, made them think, well, Chris Dawson must be guilty. And the judge today did say some witnesses who went on that podcast had their heads turned so much that their evidence was tainted. It was useless. So I guess it's lucky that this trial was for a judge alone for a start, not a jury. Not a jury like the one that convicted Cardinal George Pell. Now, the judge just went through the evidence meticulously. He went through Chris Dawson's lies. He went to the motive and the incredible improbability of a loving mother leaving behind her 2 daughters without a word. Guilty. Guilty. And we should have seen that 40 years ago. Many didn't, including the police. But how far things have come, right? How cynical we've become since Lynette Dawson disappeared. And maybe because we've learned in those decades since just how much reason we have to be cynical.